As you just heard, this webinar will be recorded and will be on our website. So with that, Ben, I'm going to turn it over to you for the webinar, and good luck.
Thank you, Bill. Can you all hear me okay?
Loud and clear, Ben.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad you all could join us today. My name is Ben Kahler. I'm the Science Coordinator for the Gulf Coast Prairie Landscape Conservation Cooperative, otherwise known as the LCC. I'd like to talk about some of the efforts that our LCC has done to advance grassland data and information needs in our partnership through some of the projects that we have funded and are currently funding, and where we anticipate going in the future looking at grasslands across the LCC. So I'd like to take a kind of an overview approach today. I'm not going to get too much into the weeds, so I'd like you to fasten your seatbelts and enjoy the ride. For those of you who may be calling in from outside of the southern part of the United States here, just to give you an overview of where we're located. The Gulf Coast Prairie LCC is, as you would imagine, along the Gulf Coast, but also we stretch through a lot of central Texas and Oklahoma. Our LCC region is broadly defined using bird conservation regions. There are 4 of them: the Oaks and Prairies, the Gulf Coast Prairie, the Edwards Plateau, and the Tamaulipan brushlands. Our mission is, as a collaborative science support partnership, we're working to deliver sustainable natural and cultural resource conservation in the LCC geography by sharing scientific knowledge, by leveraging resources, and working toward a common landscape goal. And we broadly like to do this by tackling all the different aspects of adaptive management, looking at the planning, designing, delivering, and monitoring work that we're doing on behalf of so many others. Today I'm going to focus on how we're tackling these issues for grasslands particularly. We have many different partners in the LCC, from federal agencies, state agencies, and NGOs. Our science, as a science support partnership, we are guided by our science strategy. She's 1.5 years young. In it, we've defined the landscape into 17 broadly defined habitats. For grasslands, we have shrubland and shortgrass prairie and semi-desert shrub and grasslands. But we also highlight 28 focal species, and 2 of those for grasslands are northern bobwhite and eastern meadowlark. Early on in the partnership, specifically for grasslands, there were 3 sort of broad areas that partners had identified needs in order to tackle, to address sort of the things that are going on in the landscape, and also how to coordinate efforts for grasslands. And those are land cover data, broadly decision support tools, and then the need to monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of management actions. And so I'll go through each one of these today. As far as land cover data, we're pretty proud of this. Texas and Oklahoma combined are about 11% of the continental United States, and we have high resolution land cover data now for those 2 states at 10-meter resolution. So it's much better than national land cover data, which is somewhat limited in some areas. And so we have land cover products for Texas that were developed by the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department in coordination with MORAP. And also for Oklahoma, recently finished spatial data product for land cover in Oklahoma with the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation and MORAP, and we helped fund some of the Oklahoma data set. But so combining these 2 together, the process that was used was essentially taking a small set of land cover classes, and then also what are the underlying general abiotic variables like the slope or aspect, what are the soils in these areas, and we sort of fused the land cover with the abiotic variables and together in order to inform mapped vegetation classes, of which there are well over 400 among the 2 states. So what we're looking at are, really high resolution, very detailed vegetation classes for Texas and Oklahoma. And these were developed during separate times or during separate time frames. And so what we have now is looking at putting these two data sets together, specifically along the border, doing some edge mapping, looking at building the enduring features of the abiotic conditions into data sets for Oklahoma, and also identify a process and garner commitments for doing updates. So we have these really great land cover products, but currently we don't have much of a process or commitment to do updates, even though we all know that that's really important. So for grasslands in these two products, I'll show you this in just a few minutes, but we have a pretty good recognition of and distinction of the many different types of grassland community types across the LCC. So that finer resolution of habitat types gets us a little bit further than where national land cover data was able to get us. So for decision support tools, I'm going to talk about three decision support tools that the LCC have funded or are currently pursuing, specifically for grasslands. And so one is a conservation framework for priority species of grassland and shrublands in the southern Great Plains. The other is what we're generically calling the Grassland Decision Support Tool, and the third is our coarse filter landscape conservation design. So focusing on this conservation framework for priority species, this was a project that developed best management practices for land managers and private landowners in southwest Oklahoma and central Texas to conserve grassland, shrubland, prairie habitat to the benefit of LCC focal species like the black-cap vireo, but other species such as the painted bunting, Bell's vireo, and many game species such as turkey and white-tailed deer. And so two components of this conservation framework are what are the practices for managing habitats for critters? And so there's the best management practices for habitat management. But there's also a where to do these things, an interactive land mapping tool on how to apply these best management practices for the benefit of the critters and practices you're interested in. And so for the best management practices for habitat management, this is a website that's hosted by Texas A&M for the conservation framework. And on it, you'll find this habitat management portal where for selected species and selected practices, what are the best management practices for in order to achieve what you want on the landscape for these species. And so the species include white-tailed deer, wild turkey, northern bobwhite, black-cap vireo, but also Bell's vireo and painted bunting. And the display has brush management, best management practices, but also includes, the portal also includes aspects of livestock management, cowbird control, and game and exotic harvest. So land managers have free access to this portal where they can look at best management practices for doing the things they want to do for these small set of critters. Now, how that translates in the interactive land mapping tool is this is another online system where it's freely available on Texas A&M, where you can look at specifically, where are certain priority areas for conservation of some of these species, and so what are the underlying data sets that we can look at? Ecoregions, aspects of land and water management, and also models of black-cap vireo ecosites, among other things. So an online application to bridge these best management practices onto the landscape. Another tool that we helped create was what we're calling the Grassland Decision Support Tool, and this is really identifying priority grasslands in the south central United States. And this product developed a computer modeling tool using the best available data to help identify and prioritize habitat areas so that our partners can collaborate more effectively. And so the goals were to identify landscapes of importance at the appropriate scale for further work, but also to develop GIS data and decision support tools to facilitate further conservation efforts. And so MORAP identified and mapped grassland landscapes based on neighborhood analysis of current land cover types. And what we end up with is delineations of these grassland types across the LCC. And so from north to south, we have a wide diversity of grassland systems. And incidentally, in the northern part of the LCC is where we have that changeover from warm season and cool season grasses that transitions. But the resulting data as far as prairie landscape ranks are a ranking of the higher priority or prairie patches that may be more highly suitable for achieving landscape objectives. And the third aspect, thing that we're doing for grasslands as far as decision support tools is what we're calling our coarse filter landscape conservation design. And this is a mostly in-house product that is really what we're thinking of as a threats layer for each of our broadly defined habitats in our science strategy. And so what you're seeing here is essentially the aggregation of grasslands and potentially restorable grasslands, taking into consideration the expansion of developed land cover under projections of population growth and scenarios of sea level rise. So for grasslands, we're looking at, where on the landscape are we best suited to target maintenance, restoration, and enhancement of grasslands, looking at the landscape similarity. So the third aspect of these priority needs identified by our partners was, the need to look at better monitoring and evaluation of management actions, specifically for grasslands. And so currently we know that many programs and agencies have been doing and are doing some really great work on the ground to restore and manage grasslands, and they have their own systems in place for recording and monitoring the actions that they're doing. In the Fish and Wildlife Service, Partners for Fish and Wildlife have a system called Habits. For NRCS, I know they have their own system. Texas Parks and Wildlife, Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, all of our partners, we all have these different systems. And so while we're all working and talking and collaborating together, it's still somewhat difficult to really know where all of our efforts fall on the landscape and how that might better facilitate delivering conservation for grasslands. So the multi-agency partnership model of LCCs and joint ventures, they seek to propagate and expand the reach of landscape conservation outside of administrative silos. And when I'm saying silos, I'm meaning the individual recording and monitoring systems that currently do not talk to each other. And so what we helped fund was the creation of a tool we're calling the Grassland Management Inventory Tool, or GMIT. And this was this is an online tool developed by the USGS and for the explicit purpose of pooling together, serving as a neutral platform for tracking management actions and effectiveness monitoring for an evaluation of how management actions translate into achieving landscape targets. So it's a portal to facilitate the effort of all partners involved in conservation efforts at a large scale to assess the success of conservation efforts, and enables them to track the acreage implemented in the programs, assess habitat quality, track changes over time, supplement with survey data of animals, water quality, and many other things, and to use the data as input for decision support tools to improve the future impact of enrollment programs on SGCN populations or other target species. So this is just a quick couple of snapshot of what the Grassland Management Inventory Tool looks like. As I said, it's an online tool that was developed as this neutral platform for sharing where programs and agencies are currently working to deliver grassland conservation on the ground. So it was built as a neutral platform to daylight management actions on grasslands by many, many partners, but really it's prototyped for the Oaks and Prairies joint venture. And so currently, the current version of GMIT is used by the Oaks and Prairies joint venture with their grassland restoration improvement program, or GRIP. And so the Oaks and Prairies joint venture partnership, GRIP, is a multi-organizational effort aimed at achieving grassland bird objectives in focus areas throughout Texas. So GRIP provides funding in the form of direct payment to landowners as an incentive for habitat improvement practices on their property. So project proposals are prepared and submitted in coordination with local Texas Parks and Wildlife Department staff or other JV partner organizational personnel, and approved projects will meet eligibility requirements established by JV teams. And so payments are made to landowners for approved practices after they complete, a whole lot of paperwork. But to borrow a phrase from a good friend of mine, the bottom line is the Oaks and Prairies joint venture is annually delivering tens of thousands of acres of grassland restoration using money from a whole host of organizations, a lot of upland game stamp dollars from Texas Parks and Wildlife Department help fund these efforts. And so they're delivering habitat conservation on the ground for their joint venture, but they're using the GMIT, this system, to record their actions on the ground. So the Oaks and Prairies joint venture is using this system to record what they're doing, and their goals for using the GMIT are to quantify the contribution of enrolled tracts and how that works towards achieving grassland habitat objectives, to analyze the contributions of grassland tracts to future JV objectives, a whole host of other goals, looking at providing potential sample frame for research, provide sites that can be used for ground truthing of landscape-level grassland remote sensing assessments like the Grassland Decision Support Tool I detailed before, and to provide a mechanism to track and report conservation delivery acreages by agency and organization's program and funding source at a county level to inform future partner organization conservation planning and resource allocation. So these are the goals outlined by the Oaks and Prairies joint venture for using GMIT, but there's no need to just have it all there. It could be expanded as well for other needs. And so the attributes that were built into the system currently for the JV use are there's general attributes, there's vegetation attributes, management attributes, and program attributes. So a whole host of different site-level variables that describe the landscape and the actions that they're doing. And these can be updated however often that you want. So if it's an action that gets done every 1 year or 2 years or every 3 years or only one time, those attributes can be recorded into the system. So here's a couple more shots of the system, and so it's spatially explicit. So when a user puts information into GMIT, they log a specific location, and there's a whole host of attributes that go along with those locations. And so for each site visit, you could have information that goes in there as well. And so again, the purpose of the system is to serve as a neutral platform to daylight all of the collective efforts that we're already doing, but in a way that's freely accessible for everyone else to look at. And by doing so, that information of where other people are working and what other things are going on gives us a little bit more power to make assessments on effectiveness as far as achieving population goals, and also looking at what the change over time is in certain areas for grassland management. Going forward, we're hoping to demonstrate the value of GMIT to a broader community of actors by minimizing the burden on individual actors. So that means because the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service already log these things, we don't want them to repeat or take the same amount of time to do that into the system. So we want to minimize the burden on getting the data together. We want to maximize the utility of the system, specifically for viewing and sharing of information. And also combining the information in GMIT with decision support tools for grassland restoration. Also going forward, we're looking at expanding the system to include information for other contexts, specifically for pollinators. For example, Oaks and Prairies Joint Venture was awarded $244,000 by NIFWIF last year. With the matching money from partners, it is about $600,000 that the Oaks and Prairies Joint Venture will be using to deliver grassland habitat actions specifically for monarchs. In addition, here at the USGS Center, there's a focus specifically for Louisiana coastal grasslands to look at more of a bee-centric assessment of pollen and nectar resources in grassland patches. So we're looking at expanding the system to include aspects of pollinator communities, so nectar resources, pollen, phenology, and we're also looking at other rapid assessments or things about grassland condition or ecosystem health. So really, we can expand the system to include a lot of other administrative contexts. So my final thoughts on the GMIT is that it's not spatially bound. The system can actually be used over the entire globe. It's a neutral platform for others interested in combining and sharing their actions by gathering context for engagement and decision-making. So it's a neutral platform. We want to try to look at where things are occurring on the landscape and track change over time and look at management effectiveness. We are currently expanding the application to include pollinator aspects, and in demonstrating the value to and gathering the data from partners, it's going to require some considerable focus on developing data sharing agreements. And so I use the example here of the Midwest Avian Data Center. Before I came south, I worked in the Midwest, and the Midwest Avian Data Center is a data aggregation tool for bird occurrences across the entire Midwest. And they pool a lot of different bird occurrence records from national and regional and statewide and local and all these different data sets together, but in a way that makes that data freely available for use under different conditions of data sharing agreements. And so in order to expand the GMIT for other partners, there's going to be some considerable effort devoted to looking at how to minimize the burden and also how to protect data, and so that's looking at data sharing agreements and process. Everything that I've laid out here today as far as projects and data, the data are freely housed on our Conservation Planning Atlas, which you can view from our website, gulfcoastprairielcc.org, and all of the associated underlying data for the projects and write-ups for the individual tools are also there under our science projects.
Well, this is Mitch Sternberg. I want to say first, thanks for you guys for putting this together and making it available to all of us. I was wondering about the spatial resolution foundation. Sounds really good that it's at 10-meter resolution, so that's great. Looking at the oaks as they start in deep South Texas, and those being what I would definitely call like prairie, savanna communities, not necessarily grasslands per se, and wondering about, not specifically just to that area, but how do you think partners such as like NRCS might be utilizing this data to guide their programs, like funding private landowners to do certain actions like restoring prairie? Are they using this tool, do you know?
Ben, are you on there?
I must have been on mute, sorry.
Okay.
I was talking away. Anyway, Mitch, when you ask about the tool, which one are you referring to? The GMIT, or was there another product that you were referring to?
Yeah, that was kind of a circuitous kind of question. I didn't mean it that way. Yes, I was asking about the GMIT.
Yeah, no, so the NRCS is sort of the elephant in the room because, you know, they have a tremendous amount of data and have delivered practices for grassland conservation for quite a long time. And so we all know that there are sensitivities around sharing some of that data, specifically CRP. But for other programs, Grassland Reserve Program, a lot of that data is already freely available and served up as data products like the National Conservation Easement Database. We haven't asked NRCS to evaluate this product and bridge that gap yet. That's certainly something that we're looking at doing very, very soon. We're blessed that we have broad NRCS support on our steering committee and our science team, and so they're also those members of our partnership are well aware of these products and are just kind of waiting to see how to bridge that data sharing agreements. So I imagine it's going to take a little bit of finesse, but currently the only one we have using the system right now is the Oaks and Prairies joint venture. There will be some folks here at the USGS who will be using it to expand it for pollinators, but long story short, Mitch, the NRCS is not currently using it, but we're hoping that they will very soon.
All right, great. I appreciate the answer.
All right, well, if there are any other questions after the call or after viewing this on our YouTube channel, I'd just ask to please email us and reach out, and be happy to answer any other further questions. Otherwise, my name is Ben Kahler. I'm a science coordinator for the GCP. I've enjoyed speaking into a telephone today and hoping to generate some conversation and see where this goes. Next month, we'll have a webinar by Allison Peace on a study on reservoir fish assemblages under different water conditions at Lake Texoma. And so look for that announcement in the coming weeks.